In 2011, we went and visited Roland and Heidi and went out in the bush with them. And so she did a service, we got to pray for them, and then spent the night in the village in tents. We all set up tents. So the next day, Heidi sent the team out and asked me to stay behind because she wanted me to see something. So she brings in the village elders and she begins to ask them questions about, where Iris and while we're here, and she says, what do you guys need? And they said, well, we need water, we need a school, we need all these things. And she said, okay, we'll do that. And then once the meeting was over, she turned to me and she said, did you see how I did that? But she said, I never tell them what we're going to do. I always ask them what they need. Afterwards, there was this meeting, a ceremony where she really honored the village king and brought them in and told them they were so happy that they were there and they were going to dedicate a church. And so somewhere in this meeting, I was watching all this happen, and at the end of it, I said, Roland, can a church adopt a village? And he said, wow, no one's ever asked. And I said, I think we'd like to adopt a village.
We are learning all the time what it looks like to adopt a village. The more that we go, the more we learn what that looks like. To me, the most important thing is building relationships. And the most impactful thing is loving. So what we do in the village of Shriva is we pour into the children by doing Bible school and taking them to the beach, and we pour into the church by training leadership and the pastors and teaching. And we pour into the village itself by going hut to hut, praying for people, meeting people, but most importantly, just being ourselves, loving the people that we meet, and just building relationships.
God uses us and the very smallest gifts that we think that we have in the biggest way to people that are in such great need, that have so little. But He used our smiles. He used us just holding the children. And then at the end of the day, they'd send us off and chase our cars and just be in anticipation of us returning. I've never felt such love from a group of people that they didn't know us, but yet the moment that we walked in, they were like, yes, yes, we love you, and they didn't want us to ever leave.
So Shabani, which was one of our interpreters that I got to know, I just looked over at him and I just said, I just need to know, are we making a difference here? We began to talk, and then he told me that in Makua language that there's no translation for the word hope. And that just struck me, just struck my heart. But he began to tell me, he said, whether it's sitting, which we did all these things, whether it's sitting on the beach with two people in their 80s talking about the fish they caught that morning, or whether it was praying for a daughter of a mother and seeing her back healed, and knowing that there's a generation that is being brought up that will know nothing but the love of Jesus. And in the next 10 to 20 years, those kids that we are now investing in, that Grace Center is now investing in, their lives are being changed, and they're going to have a totally different perspective of what God really is.
This village is going to be changed through the lives of the children. So pouring into these children is literally changing the families in the village of Shriva.
Afterwards, Heidi tells me, oh, Jeff, do you know the significance of this village? I said, no. She said, this is the village where I talk about in my book, they almost killed me. I was like, what? She said, yeah. She said, we came there and they would not let us preach the gospel, and they started stoning us. And so one of the little girls that Heidi adopted saw this. They surrounded the vehicle. She gets up on the vehicle and says, bring me your deaf. And there happened to be a couple of people that were deaf. And so Heidi prayed for them. Their ears opened up and everyone drops their rocks. That's the village that we've adopted.
We knew when we got asked that we didn't have the financing, but we said yes anyway. Saying yes opened up for the Lord to provide the financing for us, and we were amazed how once we gave our yes, God provided.
When I got to Africa, any other thought besides being present with the people you're surrounded by just kind of flies from your mind. And bugs are the last thing you think about. And food is the last thing you think about because you're just immersed in this wonderful village and these amazing people.
You don't have to be a missionary or feel like you are called to missions to go on this trip. We just want to invite you and welcome you, our Grace Center family, to meet our adopted family in Shriba, Mozambique.
Thank you.